airports, a solution for all of Southern California. There is no question that Southern California is growing. Some estimates say by as much as 5 million people in the next 20 years. Along with that growth will come new demands for roads, housing, port facilities, and airports. The decisions today's leaders make regarding infrastructure will have a lasting impact on California for generations to come. Several military base closings have left opportunities to rethink some of our community's land use issues. 3 former Air Force bases closed in the Inland Empire: the former George Air Force Base, Norton Air Force Base, and March Air Force Base. The loss of these bases created both an economic need for jobs and an opportunity for new airports. When urban encroachment made military aviation nearly impossible at the Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, that base was also closed. Unlike the Inland Empire bases, El Toro became the center of controversy. Some saw using the base for commercial aviation as a way to close the newly expanded John Wayne Airport. Others as an alternative to LAX expansion. However, neither option is viable. Located in the heart of one of California's most densely populated urban areas and surrounded on 3 sides by mountains and hills, El Toro is not feasible as a commercial airport. Passenger and cargo aircraft bear no resemblance to the aircraft that the Marines flew. The Boeing 747, currently the largest commercial aircraft, weighs approximately 204 tons empty and 438 tons loaded for a flight overseas. The more utilitarian Boeing 737, which is used primarily for shorter flights, say to San Francisco, Chicago, or Denver, weighs about 41 tons empty and 66 loaded for a flight to the Midwest. The KC-130 and C-130 were approximately 40 tons empty and weigh about 77 tons loaded for an overseas flight. These large planes were severely restricted in their choice of runways at El Toro. As a master jet base, the vast majority of military planes were relatively light and highly maneuverable fighter jets like the F-A-18s. The maximum takeoff weight of an F-A-18 is 26 tons, less than 1/16th the size of a loaded 747. This size difference is an important factor considering the topography of El Toro. For noise abatement, the powerful yet light fighter jets taking off to the north could easily clear the mountains. But commercial aircraft would not have that maneuverability. When a larger plane needed to take off from El Toro, it always took off to the south or west, over the most densely populated areas of Orange County. Moreover, those planes had to wait on the tarmac or make sharp turns to avoid collisions with incoming planes to John Wayne Airport. This sequencing of flights would not be possible at a commercial airport. In addition to the terrain on these northern and eastern takeoffs, the prevailing winds from the west create a tailwind or crosswind, further complicating takeoffs. Small, high-powered military jets have the ability to do this, but heavy commercial aircraft would not be equipped to regularly take off over mountains with a tailwind. The bottom line is commercial aviation out of El Toro would put the flying public at risk because there would be virtually no room for error for the pilot, the equipment, or air traffic control. This is why every pilot's organization called El Toro an accident waiting to happen. The east runways with prevailing tailwinds would not be long enough for the large, heavily loaded aircraft. This means that El Toro would never work as an international airport or long-haul airport. In fact, operational problems mean El Toro would have less capacity than John Wayne has today. Taking off towards the mountains would limit maneuverability if the plane was too heavy, the weather was too warm, or if a mechanical failure occurred on takeoff. To the east, the terrain rises 6,000 feet within 9 miles. If planes took off to the north, they would head toward Loma Ridge, which rises more than 1,000 feet within 4 miles. Unlike takeoffs over flat land or the ocean, at some points a fully loaded 747 would be 124 feet from the ground, less than a wingspan. If a plane lost an engine, or if the weight or weather calculations were off, even by a fraction, the pilot would have little ability to turn and safely return to the airport. The prevailing wind blows from the west at 8 to 10 knots, creating a dangerous tailwind for eastern takeoffs. The tailwind would make it difficult to get the necessary lift required to clear rising terrain. The plane would have to make a sharp bank right over densely populated communities. The claim that no one would be affected by El Toro is simply false. Nearly 500,000 people are under the eastern flight path. Noise abatement would cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Temperature would also be another important factor. As the temperature rises, planes departing El Toro would need to reduce loads in order to clear the terrain. During the summer, as the temperature nears or exceeds 100 degrees, planes would be able to carry only about half their load, which limits the commercial value of the proposed El Toro airport. Winter fog and rain would also reduce airport capacity. El Toro is in a valley, so landings over Loma Ridge would require a greater glide slope to clear the mountains and exceeds FAA safety requirements. Fog and rain would make instrument landings impossible. Based on weather data from the year 2000, El Toro would have closed for 30 days between January and March. That averages once every 3 days. Even airports in bad weather areas such as Denver, Chicago, and New York are not closed this often. According to FAA analysis, busy airspace to the north of El Toro would pose air traffic control risks. At about the 91 freeway and the Santa Ana Canyon, planes approaching John Wayne, Long Beach, Ontario, and LAX would intersect with departing flights from El Toro. Traffic bound for surrounding airports would have to be delayed until planes departing from El Toro clear the intersecting flight paths. Airspace conflicts would be one of the important reasons that the notion of each county building airports for its own people makes little practical sense. Looking at the Southern California airspace, there are many airports relatively close together in the far west. John Wayne, Long Beach, LAX, and Ontario, all using the same airspace. El Toro's flight paths would run in the opposite direction of all other flight paths for regional airports. This would scramble the airspace, cause delays at best, and at worst could lead to deadly accidents. A senior FAA official told the LA Times, "This airport is like driving the wrong way on the freeway at rush hour." According to the FAA, the delays caused by El Toro would have a ripple effect beyond Southern California. Every delay caused by a northern departure at El Toro would cause up to 24 delays on arrivals to West Coast airports. The problems would compound as you move across the country. Safety concerns and airspace delays would be the most serious problems with El Toro. But the cost to taxpayers and travelers would also be an important consideration, especially when more reasonable and cost-effective solutions are available. The County of Orange estimates it would cost $3 billion to build this unsafe, inefficient, problematic airport. This does not include the cost of infrastructure in surrounding communities, condemnation, and mitigation. Less than 40 miles from El Toro is the newly expanded and underutilized Ontario Airport. There are also the newly closed Air Force bases in Riverside and San Bernardino, and to the north, Victorville. Not only do these communities have the capacity and ability to serve cargo and passengers, their airspace does not conflict with other airports and the future growth in the region that will occur there. Finally, the people of those areas want the jobs the airports will create. Excluding El Toro from the regional aviation mix is the right choice for Southern California to meet the challenges ahead. It allows airports to expand where they make sense from an aviation standpoint, a population growth standpoint, and an economic standpoint. Everyone wins.